Hello, everybody, and welcome to another special episode of Carlton People. On today's episode, I finished the trifecta from the Prendercast, and I have the host, I wouldn't say the main man, but maybe he's the main man.
No.
Mr. Sean Peter Budge. What's up, mate?
Not a lot, Terry. We are all equal billing. There is no name above the title. It's the Ian Prendercast. That's why I mix it up when we do the votes. I mix up whose name's first.
No, it's good, mate. It's great to have you here, and it's great to. I feel like I'm finishing a piece of art here now that I've got the third puzzle piece, because you all bring something totally different in the way you think and the way that you speak. Where do I begin? Well, let's start with you, mate. Let's start with you and how you came to be a Carlton person, and maybe we'll touch a little bit on the Prendercast shortly.
For sure. I mean, look, I think everyone's story's sort of fairly similar. Listening to Fab last week, and even Timbo, I think, and obviously all the other programs you've done, which have been outstanding. It's family. So for us, goes back to the mid to late '60s. My eldest uncle, so Dad's eldest brother Steve, played under-19s for the Blues in the mid to late '60s, and Dad would go down and watch. And Nan, fanatical still is, Bulldogs fan. Grandpa didn't really have a team. Football sort of wasn't his thing. But, they'd go down and they'd watch Steve play in the 19s. Barassi had just arrived, so Carlton were becoming a good team again. And they'd stick around and they'd watch the seconds and the seniors. And then Dad, obviously, being exposed to Barassi, Jezza, Robert Walls. He loved Brett Croswell, all these guys. That's how he sort of came to follow Carlton. And then he very much got into music, and he still very much is into music for a little while. Still followed Carlton, but it wasn't until probably the mid part of the 80s where he was working at Telecom, as it was then, and he met a man by the name of Paul who also followed Carlton, and then that was his sort of through line back into going to games, and then that's really been a constant for him ever since. I turned up in '88. Some of my earliest memories are Carlton. I vividly remember standing at the edge of my grandma's sewing machine as she put a number 2 on the back of my first Guernsey. I vividly remember waiting at the door for Dad to get home. Did we win? And at that time, in the early to mid 90s, we were becoming better, and we usually did win. And then it took a while. My first game I went to was 1994 against the Magpies at the MCG. It was Mickey McGuan's running goal. So we lost that one, but we've been going. We go every week. We go every week ever since. So I think, like the most of us, or the vast majority of us, it's family. It's passed down. It's something that you are born into and you can't get away from.
Yeah, it's generally one of a couple of things. It's either passed down to you, or if you've come from overseas, it's probably passed down to you. You're going to marry into the family. Usually, the family is for the club, so you've got to join the party.
Without wanting to, when you mentioned coming from overseas, when I worked at the footy club, one of my favourite stories like that, an elderly German couple came in to renew their memberships, and we just got chatting, and they were lovely. And I sort of said, how did you come to support Carlton? And they said they came from Schalke, and I went, oh, the Blues. And they said, that's it. It wasn't to do with Carlton's great immigrant history, whatever. Said we moved out to Australia in the early '60s, and we were from Schalke. We loved Schalke. They were blue, and it was pretty much who's the blue team. And they said we've been just in love with the club ever since. And it's that funny thing where you went, that is brilliant.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, as you touched on, you're one of the. I don't think I've ever interviewed anyone yet for this series who's been on the inside. So you've experienced, childhood as a fan. You've experienced the inside, and now you're on the outside again. What is that like? I mean, the what you have in your mind and your experience of the club is very unique.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, look, sometimes when you work at the club, it does very quickly become like any other job you would hold, because you've got your daily tasks and the like. And look, I was very, very, very low down the totem pole. But it was great. It was great fun working there. I met some great people whilst I was there, some of which I'm still close with and friends with today. But you did occasionally have that pinch me moment where, like, without wanting to get too crude, I remember walking into the toilets one day and had the classic coming together with Juddy as you're walking out of the, and it was that moment of, holy shit, it's Chris Judd. And it's sort of like, oh, and he's sort of going, hey, and he goes, hey, and you just sort of go separate ways. So there was occasionally bits like that where you went, oh wow. But look, it was a great experience. I really enjoyed my time there, and working in a football club, whatever level, whatever code, it is always sort of good fun. So
yeah,
as for my perspective, it's a weird one because I've always been really super passionate about the club, and working there didn't dim that or diminish that at all. So some people, I think you can get a bit dispassionate with the 9 to 5 day to day. It is just a job. But for me, like I always had to, on a game day, had to rush off as soon as the bounce. Let's check the watches. We've got to get inside. So, but it was great. It was a great experience.
How did you go from? I don't know if this was your experience, but did you have to quell the passion and be a little bit more reserved or professional? Were you still allowed to be a fan?
In a lot of ways, or I suppose I should say, in some ways, it was a super positive because in some ways, like if I was like I did membership and merchandise, people would come in and they'd love to shoot the breeze, and that was great. Talk about the result from the weekend past or the pre-season or how we're going to go this weekend or the like. And those are really easy conversations to have. And people, just wanted to probably have your ear for 5 or 10 minutes and shoot the shit, as they say. The flip side of that is sometimes people ring you up and probably want you to say things you aren't prepared to say about a performance or a player. And you've sort of got to go, oh, look, I don't know if that's really fair, or, oh, yeah, I don't know if I fully agree with that. Whereas internally you're probably going, no, I do. I totally agree with what you're saying. But I can't sit here and go, yeah, he was absolute, you know what. So that was a quirky sort of aspect. But look, for me, being on that sort of frontline kind of retail type positions, whether it be on the phone or in person, there were a lot of great opportunities to really come face to face with Carlton fans, and being one myself, they were easy chats to have.
Yeah. And you lived in Manchester, is that right? For a bit?
No, I haven't lived. I've been there a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, been over there quite a few times. I was a big United fan, so it's just something else.
That's a bit of a shame, but we won't go there. We don't need to go there. It's the only time in my existence that I can actually give a United fan some sort of banter. But anyway, the reason why I asked was because obviously I've been listening to the Prendercast for years now. We've met in person. I've come on for an episode of the show, and you strike me as someone who you're so well versed across a range of sports, and not just the sports itself, but the culture around the sport, how organizations are run, how trades work around the world. So I know you did a lot of following. You're a United fan. So what did you take away from the sport world I guess whether it be as a fan or just in general? And where do you see the parallels to the AFL?
I suppose it's really economies of scale. Like you walk into an Old Trafford on a game day, and it's like a game day at the MCG, but everything's on steroids. It's like every game is 85,000 at the MCG on a Friday night. It doesn't matter who they're playing, sold out. The infrastructure around the ground is heaving. The mega store is at capacity. They've got to let people in waves. The one thing I do like, and with the proliferation of technology, as you are well across, the ability of clubs to really produce their own stuff is great. Manchester United have had an interesting relationship with the way they produce and publish media. I mean, they didn't have a Twitter. They were one of the last big teams in the world to have a Twitter.
Wow.
So when you think about it, but
yeah,
channel, they have their own very successful media arm. And I don't know, I just think that there's an opportunity for our clubs, and they dip their toe in the water a bit to really do more stuff like that. You've got the stories at your doorstep. You've got the access to the players. You know them better than anyone outside the building. I think that's something that those clubs overseas do exceptionally well. They don't rely on a Channel 7 or a Foxtel to tell the story of their club. They just do it themselves. So I think that's probably the one thing I take away is once again, the scale of their economy is enormous. It's a lot bigger than we can ever aspire to get to. But there are little learnings that you can take out of it. Like I love something as simple as They don't have a footy record, obviously. They've got the match day program. I'm not saying each club produce a match day program, but it's fantastic. You go through it, and it's your team. It's got interviews, got all these different features, whatever. And you sit there and go, it's just a great little piece of content that, I, for one, love buying when I go to the game. And it's something that they themselves own wholly and solely. I think that's something they could learn, and we could learn to sell the narrative, build it ourselves and sell it ourselves.
Yeah, I found, and I'm keen to get your opinion. I just find, not only in sport, just in general, things usually come a little later to Australia. We adopt things a little later. Why do you think that is in sport for us? Because like you said, the opportunity, I don't know, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, clubs produce the content already. There's an avenue to go another layer. Like, you can get another layer and produce more revenue for the club, et cetera, et cetera. I know that there's AFL restrictions and we're governed a little differently, but why do things happen a little later here?
I think it's just, to be honest with you, I think, and this isn't a slight on anyone. Like, I don't expect it to be a knock on anyone, but I think there's just, leaders lead. So you look at market leaders and they don't react. They come out and say they've got a piece of technology, 10 years or more than that, but it was YouTube. And you're sitting there going, you don't have to buy TV time anymore. That model has changed. You can just make the video. That's one cost. You used to then have to buy the time to put it on TV, to put it in front of eyeballs. Go, no, you don't have to do that anymore. Sign up for a free YouTube account, publish it on that, and you've got X number of thousands of people, eyeballs, wanting to get your content. Just give it directly to them. I think that there's that old media framework that we perhaps exist in longer than a lot of other markets do. And two, to be honest with you, you think of what's an example, like basketball. US sport's a great example. If we were in America, if Melbourne was a city in America, we would have one team, and everyone in Victoria, everyone in Greater Melbourne would follow this one team. So you've got a captive audience, you've got a local press that just cover that within an inch of its life. Here, we're spread across so many teams, particularly in Melbourne. We've spoken about it before. You've got, this is probably the reason why we're talking, isn't it, really? And you think about philosophically, you've got a lot of people like us who technology is now affordable enough. It's easy to use. You can just jump on something like this and have a chat and control the narrative.
Yeah.
And get people who perhaps, one of my bugbears, as we've spoken about, is just lazy, misinformed, bias-driven sort of commentary about our team from people who, once they finish talking about us, have got another lazy, misinformed, biased opinion to give about another team. So why would I want to consume that as a soundbite? You go, well, get people in the room who love the club, who are passionate about the club, who know about the club. That's who I want to hear from. So
yeah, because at the end of the day, there may or may not be. I'm pretty sure there is. There's this perception, which I think is completely off the mark, that the fans, every single one of them, is just an idiot and a nuffy and no brains. And unless you work on the inside, you don't have a brain and you can't be professional. Whereas I totally disagree. I think we have many fans who watch so much of the club, read so much, analyze so much, and can form articulated professional opinions with evidence to back it up.
Absolutely, and I'm not here saying that what we do is flawless and it's best in show and whatnot. But you sit there and you got the fact that, like, we, Fabian and Tim and I, like, our minds are blown that anyone wants to listen to anything we've got to say. Like, it's ridiculous that just the notion that somebody puts any stock whatsoever in what comes out of our mouths. But we sort of pride ourselves in the ambition initially was to be the pub chat. What's the chat in the pub after the game? What's the chat you would have? Fabian mentioned he calls Tim on the way home from the game, sort of thing. And that's what it is, the chat that you have after a game. People who love the club, who have just sat there and, poured over 2 hours of the game, having watched the previous 2 hours, having hung out for the reserves match report. They might have gone to watch the reserves. You sit there going, well, media personality A, B, C, and D aren't doing that. They're not doing that. They're not going to Kramer Street. They're not, looking at the calendar and going, geez, I could get out to Williamstown today. The boys are playing. Yeah, I could do that because I want to know more because I love the club. They're not doing that, and that's why there's that proliferation of what you do, what I do, what navy blue corner, unlucky blues, blue baggers pods, blues footy. It's sprung up extraordinarily over the last little while because there's people out there who love the club, have great stuff to say about the club, interesting stuff to say, and then people want to hear it. They want to know more.
Yeah. So you touched on the pub chat vibe. I've got to say, I've been listening for a couple of years. When I was living overseas, you guys, Carlton Live and Bucky and the Carlton Show were sort of the only real ones around at the time. And being removed from Australia, that was just my into keeping in touch, and also just hearing the Aussie accent talk about the club, which is important. And then, I don't know, I was saying this to Tim. Something happened with you guys over the last, sometime this year, where I listened to you guys, and I don't know if anything's actually changed. Maybe I've just, over time, it's just something's clicked within me. But the way you guys immerse yourselves and capture the moment where it's like I'm sitting in the room with you now. And the beauty of it is sometimes, like, you all sort of change roles for me. Sometimes you'll say something and I'll be like, yeah, I'm with him. And then Fab will say something like, come on, Fab. And then it'll completely flip around from the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And there's something in that. I don't know what you guys did, if there was a strategy change, but you really clicked for me personally over the last few months. Something happened.
Well, it's funny because I think when we started doing the show, it was just a means, for me anyway. I remember texting Fab and I said, look, because I had a piece of equipment, because I do some media stuff for the Box Hill Hawks.
Yep.
So I had a Zoom H5 recorder, and I was like, well, I could probably do, I don't know, could we do a podcast? And then it was like, well, who do you do a podcast with? And I was like, well, Fab might do it. I sent text to Fab. He responded within, the bubbles come up immediately. It was like he'd been waiting for the text his whole life. He responded in seconds. And then our other friend, Alex, who introduced Fab and I. So Alex used to work with Fab, and they're great mates. And I don't know exactly how it happened, but Alex probably got to the point talking to Fab about all manner of different things. And he probably said, look, you love Carlton and you love Manchester United. I've got someone who you should talk to about those things instead of me, because I don't care about them at all. And he introduced us. And then we obviously just kicked off a friendship, and over the next couple of years, that spitballed. So we did the show initially, and it was broad sport. And we would, because obviously Fab and I, Carlton, we would often find ourselves talking about Carlton. Alex left. I just think he couldn't be bothered doing the show anymore, which is understandable because we were terrible. And we got Tim in, and Tim was Carlton. So we found ourselves talking about Carlton more often, cutting up the Carlton bits, etc. And I actually don't know when we started just doing straight Carlton, but we got a review. It was quite funny. We got a review on iTunes that said they finally realised they're a Carlton show. And it was like, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, probably right. So we probably fought doing the Carlton show for a while, and then just figured we end up wanting to talk about this more than we probably should. So let's just do it. And then sort of spluttered around a bit doing that, and tripped over ourselves doing that for a bit. And then we had like a leading team style, chat amongst ourselves. And Fab was like, he was just like, I was sitting in the chair up the front, and he was just going, you just have to, not me personally, but someone has to host the show. We need a host. And it was like, okay, well, no, okay, I'll do it. And I think that's probably helped in giving us some direction, instead of steering it. Not because I'm a terrible host, but having someone in the chair at least kind of trying
you have to. It's important.
It sort of leans us. And I still like having an opinion, so usually that's why I'll ask a question and say what I think and then hand it over. But that sort of helped us. I think that's really given us a bit of a heading and given our shows some direction.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense now. So let's talk a bit about the club. High level, where are we at? When you think about the club, what comes to mind? Where are we at?
I think we're close. I think we're closer. I think we're so much closer than people think. I think we're not. I think it's a lot of our issues are just in the head. I think we haven't really been able to put what you would notionally think is our best team on the field this year. I reckon we're a net negative 12 points on where we should be, and where we having seen the season unfold, where we have a an expectation that we should be. I just think, and I tell the ice hockey story about the Islanders and the Oilers, and the Oilers thinking we're never going to beat these guys. And then walking, they lost another game 7, and then walking down the hallway and seeing them battered, bruised on their haunches and going, no, it's so close. We are so close to cracking this. And I think it could turn really, really quickly if we just get that mentality right. That's our biggest hurdle by a million miles. We can play electrifying football. We've got some of the best young long-term players in their positions in the competition. We've got arguably the best contested ball clearance winning player in the competition. We've got a young, really exciting batch of key forwards. You just sit there and go, look, we're not the finished article, but the spine is there. We just need some luck. We haven't seen Caleb Marchbank for so long. It's so important. I still have full faith in guys like Dow and O'Brien. They just need an opportunity. They just need some continuity. They've been really hurt by this season's reserves tier being what it is. I just think we're so close. We just got to, I'm not sure what the lever is, what the mechanism is. They've got to find that. But to trip it, we could go from being on the lip of the 8 to on the lip of the 4 real quick.
Yep. How do you when you think about the club and criticism's important, praise is important, like for you, when does it go from we're developing, give them time, patience, to demanding wins? Or does that not happen? Is that all inclusive?
That's the role of the board, isn't it? That's why the board is so important. The board has got to, I always say that, and I'm not saying we got into a bit of a tiz about the David Teague thing a week or two ago. Use a made-up club as an example. As soon as a team doesn't have questions about their coach, they're probably not thinking or looking hard enough. There's always place for a review, place for a chat, place for sort of an assessment of where we are, where we should be, where we can do better. I think that we probably just need to get this. People talk about ruthlessness like on the field. We probably need to be more ruthless off the field to get to where we want to go. And then the byproduct of that is it filters down culturally through the club. But look, I just hope this is a huge off season for us, massive, in terms of assessing all of the stuff that worked, all of the stuff that didn't work, all the things that need to be improved. And once again, that's part of the journey. If we get them right, we will rocket up the table.
Yeah, there's a little part of me that, I mean, obviously everyone wants to be at the footy this year, and a big part of our, let's be honest, big part of our livelihoods was taken away from us this year. But I kind of imagine next year already, 2021, because you've locked us in, and going back to the footy will unleash us again. And we're already loud and passionate at games, but what do you picture the buzz of the footy being in 2021?
It's interesting. I think there'll probably be, depending on how we finish the season, there's always that lingering, that sort of carryover from how we sort of finished the season in disappointing fashion, I suppose. But this season would have been really interesting to observe firsthand, particularly as we started playing better football, particularly as we started winning more games. I think it would have been an interesting element thrown into the mix of whether it affected our performance positive, negatively, otherwise. Next year, I think that there'll probably be, I suppose, even when I worked at the club, we were always terrible starters. It always felt like we were really slow out of the blocks. We'd lose 3 of the first 4, 4 of the first 5, put ourselves on the back foot. We are traditionally a wait-and-see fan base. We'll wait and see how they start. Wait and see how they start the season. Okay. If we can start the season well, the momentum that creates for the club off the field will flow onto the field.
Yeah.
So I think that, like everyone, there'll be a massive appetite. If we can get into the MCG for round 1, like the first month of the season will be sellouts. The AFL will have to schedule big games because the appetite for football will be insatiable, will be the highest it's ever been. So I wouldn't be surprised if we end up playing 3 of Richmond, Collingwood, Essendon in the first month, and they're all at the MCG. They're all marquee games, not just because we're involved. They'll mix and match the other teams as well. But if we can start well, that's the momentum that the club feeds off and needs and hasn't had for a very long time.
Yeah, I feel you. One last one before I let you go. Everyone gets the same question to finish off the Carlton People series. Give me the year that we're going to lift up Premiership number 17, and we'll look back on it, I don't know, 10 years from now and see how close everyone was.
Time capsule stuff's good.
Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, like I said, the optimist in me thinks that if we get a look in, if we get motoring, there's no reason why we can't do a Tigers, a Bulldogs, etc. Next year is a huge year for us. If we get ourselves into the mix, like I mentioned earlier, if we're a net negative 12 points and where we should be, that gets us in a normal season. That gets us a home elimination final at the bare minimum, something we haven't had since 2011. We always get funneled into state. But if we can get into the 8, we can have a tilt at it. Because the emotion will be, look at what Melbourne had a couple of years ago. The emotion was outstanding and it drove them to a preliminary final. We've got a better fan base than Melbourne. Bigger, more passionate. If we can get into the 8, we can make a run at it. Whether that's next year, the year after. Probably more realistically, you're thinking like 2022, 2023. But like I said, if we can get there, we'll be up and about. So I'll say 2022. We can realistically think we're a chance, but just get there and see what happens.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, mate, I'll be happy with 2022. Tell you what. Listen, thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry I have to cut this short. I do have to get onto other things. But it's been great. I'm very happy to finally have done the trio. Fab now earns the title of the Waffle. We're actually still going.
The Waffle King. He's on the other line. Yeah. I thought I've got the counter time like up here. We've been on the call for 28. I think he was like 54. That was my. I was sitting there going, I just can't go over Fab. Just can't do it. So when you said we're on a bit of a timeline, I went perfect. So, yeah. But I just want to thank you obviously for having us all on. It's outstanding. We're really rapt that you've reached out, and we love the work that you do, and for the rest of the Carlton sort of fan community, keep up the good work. We're far and away the best in this space. There's so many great voices. There's one for everyone. When we really love the sense of community and camaraderie that we all share, it's just absolutely outstanding. I love this series, so thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome, mate. Go the Baggers.
I could agree on that.
See you, mate.
Yeah.